Okay, Julie, handing it to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Amy. It's
Mhm.
good to see all your faces again this morning, and I appreciate y'all having me back again. I had one question before we started, again, just to kind of refresh my memory, like just the ages of your kids that most of you guys have. Like, I'm just curious, like, how many of you have a child that where the oldest is like a teenager? If you guys maybe can just like raise your hand if you have a teenager or older than a teenager. Okay, how about if your oldest is a elementary school? Okay, or your oldest is preschool, or oldest is a baby. Okay, I can only see one page at a time, so okay, so just to kind of give
Kind of
me
have a mix. We have a
yeah,
mix. Yeah.
okay, so that's, yeah, it's a good mix because it's kind of like the principles, we're going to talk about communicating with your child, and the principles are kind of the same for the most part, like across the board, no matter the age, but it definitely changes a little bit depending on the age. So I'm going to talk some about the older ages as well, only because even those of you that have babies, eventually, before you know it, they will be older. And so if you can, have those skills now, then you'll be hopefully thoroughly equipped. So that is part of my goal. So I love this topic because as a counselor, this is one of the things that I see like is just so critical. Hold on, I'm going to put up the chat here so I can see if there's something that
And I'll try and keep an eye on the chat for you also.
Okay, yeah, will you just interrupt me if there's something I need to say, because
yes.
I can't multitask very well, actually.
Yeah, I got it.
As a counselor, one of the things that I see a lot, I work with a lot of what I would call like the good kids, the kids that are maybe silently suffering. They on the outside, they make really good grades. They don't get into any like real behavior problems. They, seem to get along with people. Like you would never know on the outside that they are struggling the way that they are. But how that usually then manifests is in extreme anxiety or in, like I work out with eating disorders, like that's a huge piece, with eating disorders or, worst case, like is like self-harm, like those types of issues. So, I just kind of as a word of caution, just because your kids look on the outside, like they are checking all the boxes and they're, being successful, like that in no way means that they are okay. And so I kind of see communication between parents and kids as kind of like having a really strong immune system when it comes to dealing with hard stuff in life. And so if you can, at those early ages, establish a really strong line of communication with your child, they're going to have hard stuff in their life. Absolutely. Like they're going to have difficult relationships and they're going to have challenges with schoolwork and they're going to have, who knows what is going to, come their way. But if they can have that connection with you as a parent, I mean, it's like it's a buffer. It's a way that they can deal with that hard stuff. And so it's just so important. So one of my first goals actually as a counselor, even when I am working with kids or teenagers, is to help kind of, I call it like kind of unclog the pipes, like open up that line of communication between the child and their parent. My goal, one of my main goals is to really work myself out of a job, so that, that child would rather talk to their parent than they would me, and so it was funny. I had a client this last week and the mom got it was a Zoom thing and she was really frustrated. She said she doesn't really want to talk to you. She said that she talked to me last night and she's fine and she's really fine and she doesn't have anything to talk to you about. And she was really frustrated. I said, well, that's actually really good. Like she probably really is fine. Like she's not just saying that. And I knew this girl, I knew that she, what the issues she was dealing with. And so now, and let me just say, that's not going to help in every single situation, but for the most part, I think that you want to keep that line of communication open. Okay. So one of the things is I'm going to kind of skip down to some of my notes out of order here. How do you talk to your child? um, we always, usually as parents and adults, we want to talk to our kids kind of how we would talk to another adult. You know, we want to sit down and be like, you know, hey, what's going on? Or how are you? Or tell me about how you're feeling. Or I know there's something bothering you. Why don't you tell me about what that is? And usually with kids, that is like the surest way that they will not talk to you. You know, if they feel like you as their parent want to know how they're feeling or want to know what's happening in their life, you know, they feel like they're being interrogated, and they're going to just like shut down. And so you kind of have to go in like through the back door, you know, it's interesting. So I think I've shared with you guys before, I have a 15-year-old son and I have a 13-year-old daughter. And, you know, I've kind of studied different, you know, teenagers and kids and kind of different patterns and stuff. And so with boys, this is especially applies to boys. Like you cannot just look them in the eye and ask them, you know, what's going on in their life or how are they feeling or what are they struggling with. Like you have to distract them. And usually distracting them with food is a really good method. So, you know, my son, I've noticed that when he is just eating like a nice lunch at Chick-fil-A and has got like a soda or a milkshake in his hand, he is happy as a little clam, and he will just, you know, open up and just like talk on and on and on about everything going on in his life. And he doesn't even realize he's doing it because he's just so relaxed because his stomach is full and he's distracted. And usually we're driving and, you know, so I'm not looking at him. And so those are some really good ways, you know, with boys. You know, with my daughter, it's more, you know, usually when I am probably busy or tired or in the middle of other stuff and it's not a good time for me to talk. And that's usually when she wants to talk. And so, you know, that's when I think realizing that our kids are going to talk to us on their terms. If we're wanting to like hear from their heart, you know, this is not like a go clean your room kind of talking. This is more like what they're struggling with and what they're dealing with. And so, you know, making that decision in the moment that even though, you know, you're trying to get dinner or you're trying to, you know, clean the bathroom or the kitchen or whatever, or you're trying to do some work stuff, making that decision that when your kid comes to you, when your child comes and they are ready to open up their heart, that's kind of like a golden opportunity. And so I do want to encourage you that, you know, the way kids and teens are wired is if you don't pick that up when it's there, you can't necessarily go back to it later. With another adult, you can say, you know, hey, what you're saying is really important. I really want to hear you. You know, can you give me a few minutes? And let's go back to that. The younger they are, the less likely that is going to happen. So older teens, you can probably do that with, but the younger kids is not so much. So the other thing is funny, that happens in my office a lot is I'll have usually younger kids too, but they'll come in and they'll be sitting on my couch and, you know, we'll be talking and I have a little basket of like fidgets, you know, of little like stress balls or little things that they can play with. Or, you know, a lot of times the parents will be like really kind of bothered because they feel like their child isn't paying attention because they'll grab something and they'll be playing with it or they'll be, you know, I've even had kids like just start rolling around on the floor or they'll be like kind of, you know, hiding under the pillows or just kind of playing. And so, you know, I think as an adult, we're kind of conditioned to see as, you know, when you're talking to another adult, that's disrespectful or you're not paying attention or you're not really engaged. And depending on the setting, yes, absolutely. That's not the way you would talk to a teacher or a principal or something like that. But again, when you're trying to connect to your child's heart, realizing that all of those things where it seems like they're distracted, those are actually from their world, making it more safe for them to open up to you. Because one, too much like focus, like eye contact, attention, especially if they're talking about vulnerable things, can feel too overwhelming. And so it's going to cause them to want to shut down. And so if they can kind of be distracted at the same time, they're going to be able to share more easily and not feel so threatened. I don't know if that makes sense. But I've just seen that, especially the more active and the more sensory the child is, that's going to be even more of an issue. With boys, it tends to be definitely more of an issue. If you notice, even like with like grown men and women, you know, typically with women, you know, when we're connecting and having a conversation with each other, we're usually, you know, sitting facing each other, looking at each other over like coffee or, you know, like lunch or something and like making eye contact. And then usually the way that they connect with other men is they're usually both side by side looking at something out together or watching a game or a sporting event or, you know, listening to music or smoking a cigar, or whatever it is that they do. Like, they're not usually looking right at each other. So again, keep this in mind with your little boys. Don't, expect them to look right at you. So let's see. The other thing is another little story that I have. It was interesting. I had a teenage boy come in, and he was very, 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 very depressed, and he was dealing with some really big stuff. And his mom, was super worried about him. And one of his things is he didn't talk to his mom ever. He never talked to his mom about anything, but she could just tell because he was staying isolated in his room, and he was never coming out, and she could tell something was going on. And so, one of the things that another idea is to really show interest in the things that your child is interested in. So this boy liked to spend a lot of time on his phone. So she just started showing interest in, like, so what are you doing? What kind of things do you like? Well, he was really into watching like YouTube videos. And so she sat there with him one night for a solid hour, and she just watched YouTube videos with him. She just let him show her different things that he thought was funny or interesting, and she had never done this before. They sat there together, and for him, that was what clicked the switch back on. After that happened, he just started really opening up to her, and he started talking to her. And it was funny because they only ended up coming to see me a few more times after that, because they started talking so much that he really was good. He wasn't depressed anymore. He was able to talk to her about the things that was burdening him so heavily, that he felt lighter. He felt good. So again, like, as parents, you guys have so much power to influence your child. You have so much just ability to influence your child's heart. And so I want you to, I guess, hear the importance of this. I was in a meeting years ago, and somebody made the statement that, we are losing the hearts of our children. And that just stuck with me because, I think as Christian parents, especially, we can get very focused, which as we should be, on the behavior as well, and those types of things, but we can get so focused on the behavior that we completely miss the heart and what's going on underneath. And so, you can have I've heard it described as, a child that, they're standing up on the outside, like they're supposed to, but inside they're sitting down with their arms crossed, and so that's what we want to engage with. We want to engage with that spirit of our child that might be like sitting down with their arms crossed on the inside, even though outwardly, they're doing what they should be doing. So, did you guys all get, or did most of you get the handout that Amy sent? Okay. So this is actually a handout that I give to probably almost all of my teenage, and child clients that I work with at some point when I bring their families in, because it's just really, really valuable. And so I want to kind of go through this with you guys, kind of how I explain it. So as a parent, if you look on the top of the handout, I have here 4 ways that good parents, and I specify good because this is something that good parents would do, but unintentionally shut their child down from talking. And these are all things that are good to do, but out of order or in the wrong order, it's going to have the effect of shutting your child down, and they're probably not going to share with you. So one of them is, let's say your child comes and says that they hate going to school. They don't want to go to school anymore because all the kids are mean to them, and the teacher doesn't like them, and they have no friends, and they think they're like really ugly. Like, that's just kind of a little example. So as a parent, so what do you want to do? You want to encourage your child. You want to let them know, well, honey, that's not true at all. You have a lot of friends, and you are beautiful, or you are, so talented. And you want to just give them all this encouragement, right? I mean, that's what a good parent, you naturally would go to. You're not going to be like, well, too bad, deal with it, And so what happens though with many children, especially if they are geared more towards pleasing, like they want to please you, they're more maybe performance oriented, they don't really seek out conflict with you, what the tendency is going to be is they don't want to argue with you. And so they're going to just kind of stop talking. Like, well, yeah, okay, mom, thanks. And they'll walk away. And, as a parent, we can think, okay, well, that went well. I, gave them encouragement and they heard me, they received that. And, but what happens is it didn't necessarily go well, because they still feel what they feel and they weren't able to get that out. So, giving advice too soon, well, this is what you should do, or have you tried this, or what about this? Here's a good idea. Why don't you, talk to your friend or talk to your teacher, or, encouragement, speaking truth, before they're able to hear it. So the, like scripture, giving them Bible verses, which is absolutely important and a wonderful thing to do. And we should be doing that. But let me just kind of paint you guys a picture of what this looks like. So imagine your child is walking around and they're carrying, I got my water bottle, pretend this is like a pitcher, like a big pitcher, filled with this like dirty, murky, like gross, like water, right? And they're walking around carrying this, and you have this pitcher full of this good, pure, clean, fresh water. And you know that this water that you have for your child is life-giving. You know that it will completely like change their world if they would just like take this water. So you're trying to pour this water into your child's like pitcher, but they're already full. That's the problem. They're maxed out. They're filled with all of this dirty water, and there's nowhere for it to go. So what it does is it spills all over the place, and it makes a big mess, and you're frustrated, and your child is frustrated, and nothing good comes from that. So kind of the concept that I'm, here to kind of talk to you guys about is what it would look like to help your child first empty out their pitcher. Empty out all that dirty water, get rid of it all so that there is space for them to be able to receive what you have to offer them, good, pure, clean, fresh water that is life-giving. So that's really the bottom line, the principle of what I'm talking about here. It's getting to your child to a place that they can hear truth and that they can receive from you the good things that as a parent that you do have to offer them. For the most part, just so you guys know, I work here. I'm at Hope Counseling Clinic. It's parents bring their kids here willingly and voluntarily. Most of the parents I work with are amazing parents that want nothing but the best for their children. And so, again, my job is to come alongside those parents and help them be doing that in the most effective way possible. So again, teaching them how to do this. So speaking truth before the child is able to hear it. The other one is correcting a misperception before fully hearing the child out. And this is a really hard one. I can give you an example. So we went through a phase where my son was just convinced that, we just loved my daughter more. Like she was our favorite, and, she, never had to do any work, and he's the one that always got in trouble. And so I tried many, many times, many conversations telling him that that's just not true, and I would give him examples of, all these different things, and it was never helpful. Never did anything but cause him to get more angry and more frustrated. And so finally, one day we were in a long car ride, and I tried to, practice my own advice here. And I was like, so you really feel like that we love your sister more? Like you really think that we favor her? Can you tell me more about that? Well, yeah, because, you, and he went into this whole explanation of why, and he was actually pinning it back to this one incident that happened that was very interesting. And so, so I was, able to then say, well, okay, so let me see if I'm hearing you. So you're saying because of, this that happened, with this and this and this. And so because of that, like you really feel like that we love your sister more, and that she, gets away with more stuff, and she's got more privileges than you. Is that right? And he's like, yeah, that's how I feel. Okay, well, is there any more? And he's like, no, that's it. And he calmed down. Like he was calm. I was like, oh, okay, this is actually working. And so after he felt he was calmer, I said, well, do you mind if I share with you kind of some of my thoughts about that? Some of my thoughts about kind of what you just shared with me, and, how I feel about, and at that place, he was willing to hear. And he's like, sure, no, that's fine. You know, and so we were able to have a conversation. He knew that I had heard him. He knew that I heard him. I got it. I understood what he was saying. I understood why he felt that way. And so he didn't have to keep trying to make his point over and over and over, just sure that I wasn't hearing him and I didn't get it and I didn't hear him. And so at that place, his little pitcher was empty and he was able to receive, and we were able to explain. And it was actually something funny because he is older and she is younger. And so we, at one night, in a family movie night, we picked like a movie that we hadn't let him watch at the same age that she was when we watched the movie as a family. And so, you know, because of that, he was convinced that, you know, we must love her more because he had to wait till he was this age, you know. So we were able to explain the whole thing at family movie night and looking at each kid individually, and, you know, like, you know, and so it was interesting how that actually worked. So one of the things, and also too, just when I do this with parents, it's usually very interactive. And I think I've shared with you guys before, usually my preferred way to even do with a group like this is to have interaction. So if you guys do have a comment or a question, please, you know, you take yourself on mute and interrupt me or raise your hand or something. So, or send in a message to Amy. Okay, so I want to make sure I make the point too, that just because you listen to your child, just because you hear them out, does not mean that you agree with them. It absolutely does not mean that you agree with them. And so that's the other hesitation. That's why this is really hard for parents, because we feel like we're almost giving credibility to it by hearing it out, you know. So, but that's actually just not the way it works. So, so kind of one of the, some of the ground rules, as I like to call it, is, you know, when your child is, when you have one of those like golden opportunities, you know, when your child does come to you and just like start talking, or you can tell that they're ready to open up, or maybe like you're driving in the car or whatever it is. Actually, if you're driving the car, you're not going to make eye contact, so I take that back. But anywhere else than driving in the car, you know, you are going to stop what you're doing and you are going to look at your child and you are going to let them know that you're not like half listening while you're also on your phone or your computer, or you're not just like half listening while you're, you know, doing something else, but you want to make sure that they know that you are their priority in that moment. And so, and this is especially, I think, for little girls and for little boys, depending on their personality, you know, you kind of tell, do they need some space where you're looking out the window together, or do they need you to look at them? So I'm gonna, this is also a form I use as I'm teaching both, you know, the child and the parent together. So I'm teaching like the child or the teenager how to, as the speaker, if you guys are looking, does anybody not have this? I mean, Amy, you sent it to everybody that's on this call, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so the first thing is, I'm just gonna go through it with y'all. So I tell the speaker, ideally, as you know, your child's probably not gonna do this though. If they can come to you and say, like, Mom, you know, I really have some stuff I want to talk about. Like, is this a good time? They're probably not going to do that because they're a child. So then, you know, I teach them to say what they want to say, but using kind of like short little blurbs and using I statements and, you know, focusing on like bite-sized chunks, not going on and on and on. Again, because it's your child, depending on the age, they're probably not going to do that. So you guys, let me see here. If you have a chance to sit down, depending on the age of your child, and kind of go through this with them, then I think that piece would be helpful. But if not, your role is going to be more as like the listener. So I'm going to just kind of skip over the speaker part. And this is actually harder than you would think it would be. So what you're doing is, as your child is talking, you're really just listening to what they're saying, and you're not correcting them. You're not defending yourself, or you're not defending, you know, what actually happened. You're not explaining the actual scenario, and you're not, and this is one of the hardest problems for parents, is you're not asking questions like related to like getting more information. So let's say, again, it's a situation with a child that's being picked on at school. and the child says, well, you know, I don't want to go to school because everybody's really needs me. And, you know, this boy keeps like making fun of me in my class. You know, what you want to be saying as a parent is you want to be saying, well, what did he actually say to you? You know, and you want to get more details. And okay, well, then what did you say to him first that led to that? And, you know, well, what did the teacher do? And how did this, you want to understand more. And there is a time and a place for that. I will say there is a time and a place for that. But initially, if your goal is not so much to get information from your child to get to the bottom of this and solve the problem, if your goal is to connect to your child's heart, which I'm telling you is more critical in the moment, there's plenty of time to get more information later, and that's going to be way more effective if you connected to your child's heart first anyway. You want to hear what they have to say. They don't necessarily, it's not helpful for them in the moment to tell you how the teacher responded or exactly what happened right before this child picked on them. And so when you start asking those questions, you're kind of taking charge of the conversation and you are making it go in the direction that you want it to go for your benefit. And then it's no longer helping the child feel connected to you. Does that make sense? It's kind of like derailing, you know, their heart in that way. Okay. So what you do want to do is kind of like an example I gave you guys with my son is you want to repeat back what you've heard them say. And it sounds really silly and really basic, and it might feel like really weird, but I'm telling you, like, this actually works. So if you respond, okay, so you're saying that school was really bad today and the kids were really mean to you, and this one boy particularly was really picking on you. You're kind of summarizing like what you've heard them say, and then you ask them, is that right? You know, is that right? Is that what you're saying? And then give them a chance to say, no, that's not it. Not the whole class wasn't picking on me. It was just this one boy, just this one boy. Oh, okay. So not the whole class. It was just the one boy. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So you're with them so far, right? So at this point, you know, you're hearing what they've said. They feel like you're tracking with them. They feel understood. And then this question is really important. You say, is there any more? Is there anything else? And that's especially for a child that tends to not be super open and not be one that shares a lot. They are kind of feeling you out. And so they'll maybe say little tiny bits. And then based on, as parents, I think what we want to do is we hear a scenario, we hear a problem, and then we want to immediately go into fix-it mode. You know, we want to offer lots of solutions. And it's funny, because I also, as you guys know, I work with couples a lot as well. And so I always say it's funny because, like, you know, in parent and child relationships, like the moms become like the husbands are in the marriages. The moms become the fixers and the moms become the one that, you know, it's like we forget like how much we want to just be heard and how important it is to just express like how we're feeling. Like, and our kids are the same way. And so, again, I think just letting them, you know, don't start talking too fast. I had one parent and child that I worked with years ago, and she was one that she was actually dealing with like, you know, some, you know, eating disorder types of issues, and she was very, like she was very shut down. And so, you know, the goal, I was trying to help her learn to talk to her mom and open up, and you know, and the mom, it was a great mom, amazing mom. And she had so much wisdom and so much great stuff to share with her daughter. And so her daughter would say like one little bit and the mom would go, okay. And she would start like just talking and just giving her encouragement. And I'd see the daughter just, she was just like, she was super tense. And so I would say to the mom, like, okay, just like, wait a minute, she's not quite done. She's got some more in there, you know? And so we went back and forth doing this like speaker listener thing, several rounds. And then finally you saw the daughter, like you saw her just relax, like she visibly just sighed and her whole body language changed. I was like, okay, now she's done. And so that was when like her picture was empty. Like she was ready. Like she felt heard. She felt understood. She felt relaxed. And it was great. It was beautiful. And so like one of the things too as moms, like and you probably already are, but like become like an expert on your child's body language. Like pay attention and learn the cues when your child is shutting you out and when they are engaged. And I think what we do as parents is we tend to, and this is, I'm speaking a lot probably from the teenage place because that's where my kids are at. But we tend to see the signs of when they're shutting down as they're being disrespectful or they're not paying attention, you know, or we see it as like a behavior problem or and then so then we often will jump in and address that. Well, now you're not really paying attention and now you're being disrespectful. So, and so then now they're in trouble, you know, and so really, you know, what is happening is they're just frustrated and they're hurting and they don't know how to be heard. They don't know how to say it in a way that will hear it. And so again, I think it is such a gift that you can offer your child to be able to just hear and listen to what they're saying. So, so let me just kind of reiterate what I've said. So, you know, as your child is talking, you want to repeat back what you've heard them say. You want to check and ask them, is that right? And then you want to ask them, is there more? And you want to do that with them as many times until they are done, until there's nothing else that they have to say. And so that might be a long time, or it might be very fast, depending on your child's personality. So I want to check in here for just a second before I go on. Is there any questions or comments up to this point on anything that I've shared with y'all?
I saw one question come in through the chat, and I'm sure there's some other questions too. One was, can you talk about how to communicate with a child who doesn't really know how to express their feelings?
Yes, that's good. So either this could be, oh, there's a cute baby on the screen. There's, it could either be a young child or it could just be a child that hasn't learned how to express their feelings very well. So I think, again, getting them to share whatever they will share, and it might be just telling you what happened, or it might be, you know, they might have just like a word that they use, you know, over and over. And so you can even express, so I have here at the bottom, you know, talking about like empathy, you know, saying, wow, you know, so you know, we're telling me that this little boy at school was being mean to you, you know, and you can say, you know, I would imagine that might be, you might feel really hurt, or maybe you feel really sad. Like, is that right? Is that how you're feeling? Or, you know, if that happened to me, I might even feel angry. You know, I don't know. How do you feel? You know, and so kind of teaching them some words and checking in with them, and not telling them how they should feel, or not telling them, well, this is probably how you feel, but just kind of having that dialogue. And so there's a technique, and I think we've talked before about the book, The Whole Brain Child, where it talks about name it to tame it. And so a lot of times when children have very strong emotions and they don't know how to express it, it's going to come out in really unhealthy behavior. And so teaching them feeling words, you know, and if you even have, like, I know in my office I have like a little feeling word chart, you know, and so sometimes I'll just give them the little chart. Or Netta, you know, with the little one, she has like the little different faces or little emojis, and emojis are really helpful, actually. You know, well, can you tell me like which of these can describe how you're feeling right now, you know? And so teaching them the words, teaching them how to express it, so it can help calm those emotions. Does that make sense? Okay.
I know I have one question, but I don't want to, I mean, if you still have more content to cover, you can go ahead and finish that, and then we can ask at the end, or I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
So, and it's almost a two-part question, but at the very beginning you said something about when you're, you know, oftentimes, hold on, the yard guy's here. Sorry, it was loud. About oftentimes children are suffering in silence.
Mm-hmm.
So, so how do you know when they're suffering in silence? And then the second part of that question is, are there questions to ask our children when they're young that will kind of start fostering open lines of community, like good questions here in school, they're like, don't, you know, ask open-ended questions, you're not going to get an answer unless you ask open-ended questions. Is there some good questions that you say, this is really good because it teaches them when young, and then as they're older, those healthy habits are established. Does that make sense? So I guess kind of identify when they're suffering in silence, and then what kind of questions to help kind of get underneath that.
Right. Yeah. It's funny, Amy, because you shared that you guys are all quarantined right now, which means you're probably all keeping to yourself, which I'm so sorry. That's going to be so hard. I was going to say, one of the things I tell parents is if your child is spending a lot of time by themselves in their room, that can be a warning sign, unless you're quarantined in your room. And that's that doesn't always apply. But if your child is really withdrawing from your family, and this is thing too, people will say, oh, that's normal teenage behavior. It is to a small degree, but not as much as people think. Because teenagers actually also really can enjoy their family and actually really love being around their family. And so, and depending on, are they an extrovert or introvert, maybe they need more alone time. But I think, learning to tell the difference between like shutting you out to just wanting alone time. And so that really is a warning sign. Another one is, and again, I don't want to say this is like a completely cut and dry thing, but if they were a very physically affectionate person, and then now all of a sudden they are never okay with physical affection, if they're never okay, like, with hugs, or they just, a lot of times that is an indicator that there is something going on inside of them, where they're really pushing people away. And so it's very normal for children, or not for children actually, for teenagers to go through periods where they don't want to be touched, don't want to be hugged, leave me alone. That a healthy version of that is they kind of feel that way for a moment, and then the next moment they're fine, whatever they want to have, So just kind of be watching for that as well. I always say they're fine. If all I ever get is I'm fine, then you might be asking questions in the wrong. Fine. So I may have shared this with you guys before. So fine, to me, is an acronym. It means feelings inside, not expressed. And if you think about it, when somebody asks you, how are you? And you say, I'm fine. Really what you are usually saying is, I don't really want to talk about it, So I think just be careful. So, again, the solution to that is not always to sit them down and say, I can tell something's bothering you, you spend time in your room, you're shutting us out, you're not letting us give you hugs, like what's going on? I know something's going on, and not that it's never okay to have that conversation. But I think more what's helpful is to, kind of make it feel more appealing for them to be around you, and so, when you are with them, talk things that are interesting to them that maybe they'll want to jump in on. And so this is the other thing I want to make sure to share is how as moms, we react and respond to our children is so critical. Actually, and there's a difference between react versus respond. If you're taking a medication, you have a reaction, that's the very thing, right? If you have taken a medication and you respond to it, that's a very good thing. So you want to be responding to your children, not reacting to your children. Again, which can be hard because they're going to say some things that are going to be very triggering, as parents, or very alarming, or we're like, you did what? Or they said to you, or, and so, but how you respond is going to set the stage. So Amy, what you're saying, when they're young, it's going to set the stage of, are you a safe person for them to talk to, or are you not a safe person to respond to? And so if their question is, every time mom hears anything that she doesn't like, she freaks out, they're going to stop talking to mom. They just are. And so, and they're going to start going out of their way here to make sure that mom doesn't find out anything, but if perception of mom is that even when mom hears something that she really doesn't like, she is a really, really good listener, and she's able to be understanding but offer also truth and wisdom and guidance, then they are going to seek you out. They are going to want to talk to you. So one of the things is, regardless of what they say, don't act shocked. Being shocked, unless it's like, this is the exception to acting shocked. So if you have like a little boy and he's showing you that something that's really gross, or like an animal that's really slimy or disgusting, then you can act as shocked as you want and he'll love it. Like, oh, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Oh my goodness. Okay, be shocked. Like, he'll love it. But if he's, if they're telling you about something that happened or something that they did or something that somebody else did and you act shocked, like, they're going to probably not say anything else again. So you kind of want to just be like, okay, well, tell me more. Like, you want to be inquisitive and curious and get more information from them. So the other thing that's happened a lot is I've seen a lot of younger kids where they've been in like bullying types of situations, or, peer, different relationships and friendships where kids are really scared to tell their moms what happened, because again, if you're a good, loving, protective mom, you're kind of going to have that mama bear like kick in. Mm-hmm. And so when your child tells you that somebody's done something to them that's not okay, you want to launch into action, right? And that's understandable. And sometimes that is necessary, but realizing you've got to choose really carefully and prayerfully how you respond to that. Because again, especially the younger ones, you want to set the stage where you are the safest person in the world for them to talk to. So if they are convinced that the second you hear something that you're going to go call that mom on the phone, or you're going to go, confront that child or call the teacher or whatever, and that child's going to be humiliated, even though that might be the most protective thing in the moment, like, it's very likely that your child will not tell you anything else again in the future. And so again, it's like a judgment call. And like, how do you handle that? Because from my perspective, I think you absolutely have to consider your child's safety. Absolutely. So safety is the most important. So if your child is being like seriously bullied or is in some type of danger, or if it's something that, you need to intervene, then you need to intervene. But I think more effective is to ask your child, wow, like, this is really a big deal. Like, this really upsets me for you. This really concerns me. And ask them, like, how would you like me to support you in this? Like, how can I help make this better for you? And if they're like, well, I want you to call my teacher, or I want you to talk to the, other kids' parents, then by all means, like, do that. But if they're saying, please, please, please don't, sometimes you might need to anyway. Okay. Just so you know, sometimes, I mean, as the mom, that is your ultimate judgment call, but just be careful about it, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, don't just too flippantly go into the mama bear mode, because again, especially if your child is young, there's going to be so many more things that happen. We're just now getting to that phase where my kids are telling me things. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, these are like really big deals. And so I have to, make a decision, like, okay, how much, weighing that, like, keeping that line of communication open, it's hard. So, and then giving them, I think the other thing, like, I've already addressed this one, is when they're younger and they're sharing something important, is giving them space to just talk and not jumping in too quickly to, offer them solutions or answers. Okay. So are there any other questions that, does that kind of answer that question, Amy, a little bit?
Yes, thank you. If you have a question, you can either just raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you can put it in the chat, whatever works best for you.
And I think, just so you guys know, this is very different from communicating with your child, like, you need to go clean your room, or you need to get your homework done. And so usually, like, when I'm with somebody, I do like an example where I draw like kind of like a straight line, A to B, like, you need to go clean your room, A to B. Like, you say it. There doesn't need to be a lot of discussion around it. You don't need to, repeat back what you're saying. You don't need to like reflect and validate and how do you feel about that? And, like, that's not that type of communication. what I'm talking about here is more like kind of what we call like heart talk. And so this is more and I think it's important to make that distinction with your child as well. Because as a parent, like, you are the authority. And so they do need to obey you, and they do need to do what you're saying when you're having that type of communication, you know, it doesn't need to be going round and round and round about it. But what I'm describing, it's A to B. It's not so much a straight line. It's more like you are going around and around and around. Well, I feel like this, I feel like this, and I feel like this, and I really think this. And, you know, you're going up and down and all over the place. And so for you as a parent, making that very clear distinction, that there is a difference in the type of conversations that you're having. So does that make sense?
Yes, that was helpful.
Years ago when I was teaching this I remember I had a dad, you know, come in here, and I had not made that distinction, you know, and he was like, well, so what about when I'm telling him to clean his room? You know, do I need to repeat back how he feels about that? I'm like, no. That's a different. And two, I think, like Amy brought up too, is how you relate to your child when they're little is going to set the stage for when they're teenagers. And so they're not going to come to you probably at little ages, hopefully, you know, with big important things. It's going to be more, you know, just, maybe it's more like happy stuff, like, hey, mommy, look what I just drew, or look at my picture. And so those moments can be just as precious as your teenager, you know, coming and opening up to you about her first crush, you know, or whatever it is. And so, because what you're teaching your child in those moments when they're coming and showing you a picture they just drew, or something they just made, you know, with Legos or whatever it is you're showing them that their heart is precious to you, and that their heart matters to you, and that they are worth you looking away from whatever it is that you're doing in adult world and focusing on them. And so again, just giving them that reassurance that their heart matters, that they are important, that you are there for them, that you are available and accessible, and that, you know, as a mom, as busy as you are, you know, one of the things I hate when I hear my kids say, and they do more than I wish, is that, you know, mom, you're just so busy. You know, and yes, and I think, you know, our kids need to see that we're working hard, and that we're, you know, we're not just, you know, whatever, but I don't want my kids to feel like I'm too busy for them, you know. And so I think, you know, helping your kids know that no matter what you've got going on, that you're not too busy for them, you know, and that they are important, and their hearts matter, and they matter, and that they can always reach you if they need to. You know, again, maybe not the very second they want to, but that you're reachable. And that's, you know, some of the attachment things that I know we've talked about in the past is, you know, a healthy attachment means that I can reach you when I need you, and that when I do reach you, I know you care, and that you'll be there for me, and that is that whatever need I have is going to be somehow addressed, you know, in my relationship with you. And so that's really what the heart of this communication piece with our child is about. So that's most of what I got there, Amy.
Well, it's so helpful. I know there's a couple of other, do you have time for a couple other questions?
Sure.
Okay. We'll take these two, because I do want to be respectful of your time, but there is a question about if you have a child that has a friend that you need to separate and create some distance, how do you go about doing that in a healthy way?
Yeah, that can be a really tricky one. It kind of depends on the age of the child too. Are we talking about like elementary school or
middle school?
Middle school.
Like sixth grade. So leaving elementary, heading into middle school.
Yeah. I think, and there's, again, I know in that question, there's probably a lot of details and nuances. And so I think, again, it's different if it's your child that's wanting to separate, or if you're the one as a parent saying that there needs to be a separation. So I think just kind of in line of what we're talking about with the communication piece is, you know, obviously if it's a friend and there's a separation that's needed, your child's going to have a lot of feelings and emotions about that. And so kind of as the, you know, primary objective first is to just really hear your child's heart in that, and help understand from their perspective what happened, you know, how they feel about it, why they feel the way they feel about it, and letting them know that you hear that this is what happened, this is what's going on, this is how you feel about it. Am I hearing you correctly? Am I understanding this right from your perspective? Making sure your child feels heard. And then in that, after they feel like that you really get where they're coming from, you know, then, you know, after, you know, if you're consulting with your husband or whatever, you know, saying like, this is how we feel like this needs to proceed from here, you know, and explain like, you know, whatever the issues are related to that. And so I think your child is going to be able to hear from you kind of a tough decision or a tough consequence or whatever it is easier when they feel like you really get their side of it and you're at least taking that into consideration and you're not just flippantly saying, well, I don't care, this is what needs to happen. Yeah, and I'm assuming that it's the parents or, you know, on inspiration on that. Does that kind of answer that a little bit? Or is there any other about that question? I think Amy, you're muted.
So sorry, I was just going to say if there's still a follow-up to that question or you need more clarification, just put it in the chat. And then also another question was, can you talk again, kind of revisit how to do the eye contact thing when communicating with boys?
Yes. Okay. So I realized, so I kind of like contradicted myself in that because I'm saying don't have eye contact with boys, but then I have on my thing, make eye contact. Okay. So again, it's, you have to kind of feel it out in the situation. So parenting is like an art and a science, right? So there's like the science, the principles that this is always true and, you know, 2 + 2 always = 4, whatever. But then there's the art piece. You kind of are feeling it out, like, you know, whatever feels right in the moment. So I think if your son is wanting to talk to you, if he comes to you and is like, hey, mom, you know, like I want to talk or I need to tell you something, stop what you're doing, make eye contact. Look at him, don't be distracted. If your son is kind of like not wanting to talk to you and, you know, kind of like shut down and you're trying to kind of bring him out, you're trying to draw him out, don't stare him in the eye. Try to get him distracted and take him to Chick-fil-A and, you know, put on his favorite song and, you know, like look out the window together. Does that make sense? Does that answer that? Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. Yeah, I know that was kind of confusing. Sorry about
that. That's good.
And with girls too. I mean, again, I think the general rule is if somebody's wanting to talk to you, then they want your attention and they want to know that they have your attention. But if you're kind of trying to just, if they're hesitant to talk to you or scared to talk to you, or maybe just, you know, hesitantly opening up, then you want to make it feel less threatening. Which is why we do like a lot of play therapy with children. One reason why that's so effective is because, you know, I have, you know, kids that will come in and they will never talk. If you're sitting there, they're sitting on a couch across from you when you're looking at them and asking them to talk about their feelings or their problems. Like there's not a chance they're going to tell you anything. But you put them on the floor and put like a big box of sand in front of them with a bunch of little plastic toys and they'll just start playing in that sand and they'll just start talking and talking. And they don't even realize that they're talking, but they're talking out of their heart in the moment because they're not like thinking about the fact that they're talking. So.
That's awesome.